Strip mining. This is a new phrase that you're going to be introduced to today. There are two parts to this monologue. The first one, I'm going to take a look at how strip mining has affected the three big countries in the Western Europe, that is United Kingdom, France, and West Germany. And in another episode, I'll do what strip mining has done to the industry in United States and how United States is also affected by this. So these are all what I would call as exotic derivatives. The problem lies in the fact that for the last 45-50 years, the best and brightest minds of the world have gone into high finance. And these people realize that there is not much money to be made in just doing stocks. So they started coming up with exotic financial instruments. For example, derivatives, futures and options. Then the derivatives started getting more and more exotic. You had the mortgage-backed securities, and then you had the collateral debt obligations. Now these derivatives have taken a life of their own, and what they are sitting on is a very slender piece of value asset, and if that asset even changes a little bit, these people get shaken up quite a bit. You know how First Republic Bank and the Silicon Valley Bank almost failed 2 years ago because the interest rates were raised too fast by the United States. That was it. Nothing else. Because these people were complacent, even though they knew that the interest rates are going up, they did not expect the interest rates to go up that fast. And that's why they said, oh, we didn't know that. And finally, what happened was some influential people happened to have investments in Silicon Valley. And that's the only way I can put it, which is why Janet Yellen made the entire thing whole. So who gets to pay all that? You and I, the US taxpayer. You have to be mad about it, but many of us don't even know that carpet is being pulled from under our feet. So like I said, I'm going to come to US in another episode. Today we're going to take a look at United Kingdom, France, and Germany, and each one has its own story to tell. A small infographic, as always, to explain to you what is going on in strip mining, what was attempted by these people, and how the pensioners don't have a guarantee that they will get their annuity check every year or probably even every month. This is going to become harder and harder, in my opinion. I could be horribly wrong, of course, but the data is pointing it otherwise. So let's take a quick look at this one. As always, please like this video, and if you have not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to our channel. Here we go.
Me and my daughter decided to come to 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗏. And hence, when Dia was diagnosed with myopia and she had a -2 power, and I was here in this beautiful sanctuary, words can't explain because you yourself have to come and experience this.
So, financial strip mining, an analysis of how short-term profit extraction is weakening the economic foundations of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. Let's think a little bit simpler terms, right? So there's a big institution, let's say the public schools of United Kingdom, and all of them have a pension fund, and everybody is putting money into that pension fund. The idea is that this fund grows, and as this thing grows, it will have some good fund managers to take that money and invest it in well-growing companies, and then get the profits out of that, so that the dividend goes up every time there is a payout made. And everybody feels, nice, last year I got £150 a month, this year I'm getting £175 a month. Great. But what happens is, somewhere along the line, these people have been led to believe that investing not in actual brick and mortar companies, but in exotic financial derivative instrument is going to yield them a higher yield, and that's where things have gone horribly wrong. So I'm going to take a look at first United Kingdom, and then France, and then Germany. Each one has a slightly different story to tell. So what really happens is, these institutions are loaded with debt. Like, for example, they are not supposed to be investing into money like private equity or into mergers and acquisitions. What happens is, financial actors, private equity funds, or somebody who they think is a whiz in finance, these people will acquire companies and load them up with debt. This forces the company to generate immediate cash to service the debt. And that means that it needs to keep selling off some assets. First of all, what it does is it reduces investment. It cuts R&D, infrastructure, and capital improvement. And guess what? They start stripping out the product design centers and start saying, okay, we just design some things here. The rest of the stuff along with the design will be given to country like China, which will basically move the product. And what we have is a name brand, and we'll just get the thing from China and pass it off as our own and sell it to the public. No one will be the wiser. This is the idea. But then what happens? Just read on. Now, what happens next is, if that is not possible, that is, if they cannot, there are only so many designs you can pawn off to China, and then you lose the design strength. The company that gets all the designs, they start improving on the design, then you no longer have the control over your own technology. Next, what happens is they'll start looking at assets. Oh, there is a big 15-floor building of our company in Sussex. What are we doing with that? Why don't we just sell it? And they start selling that. And these are actual assets. If that was rented out to a proper company or a proper bank or something like that, that could be giving them interest income, which is wholly owned by perhaps this pension fund. Now what they do is, let's just sell that thing and get that money. This is all to keep getting short-term cash flow, because once you sold that thing, there is no more asset left. And that money that comes in, bulk of that goes to giving fat bonuses to all these people who dreamed up of this excellent idea to try and sell off some of the non-performing assets. You go to some of these annual general body meetings where they will bring in the expert who is supposed to be handling your finance. All they will utter are highfalutin phrases, much of it which the pensioner, the board will not understand, but it would look like it's a very clever thing to do. Unfortunately, you are not realizing that somebody else is eating your lunch. I'm not saying that it happens in every pension fund, but you need to really understand what the F they are talking about, and feel free to stop them and tell them, I don't understand this word. Break it down to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Then see how these people start sweating, because eventually they'll blurt out the truth, and that whatever it is that they are suggesting you do may not be a good idea after all. I'm just giving you the general philosophy of life. Try it next time, you will understand what I'm saying. I'm talking to a lot of people who have put in all their hard-earned savings into some kind of a pension system and so on and so forth, and all these things are at risk. That's all I'm going to say. Now, then what happens when both these are done, that is offshoring some of the designs and selling off non-performing assets, then they start indulging in staff cuts and wage stagnation. Then what happens is this decreases service quality, and it also starts depressing labor income. So the entity into which you are doing all these things, they start becoming more and more threadbare. Let's say your pension fund management office had 100 people managing it. They have to take care of disbursement. They have to make sure that the assets are performing, that if a certain place which did not pay rent for 3 months, what do you want to do? You want to foreclose on them? Do you want to move them? You understand all these things. So when they start stripping off the employees, then there are fewer hands managing these things. So what happens? They just let things drift, and slowly but steadily you start losing more and more value. Then what happens? So first thing is, they have loaded the institutions with debt because they want to strip out the assets. Then what happens is, how do you deal with what is left? Then what they start doing is, they start extracting capital from the funds. The funds are the pension funds themselves. What happens is, they will start diverting massive capital pools like pensions away from long-term productive use and into high-fee financial products. Like I said, derivatives. For example, what they will do is, why do you want to invest in this XYZ brick and mortar company? It only gives you 11% return on investment. Instead, why don't you look at this financial derivative, and this one is going to, make up some story where they have found some mining in somewhere like Afghanistan, for example. So, this is going to give you double that amount. You should be investing here. Except most of these are just paper plans, and they don't really amount to much. So what happens is, from banks, they'll be given stories like, you can start using this risky, high return activities, but unfortunately, they will not tell you all that. But when it fails, it will require the government to resort to public bailouts, socializing risk. Basically, what it means is, again, you, the taxpayer, end up paying for the follies of a few who had this grandiose scheme. Sometimes they get into it with their eyes fully open that this might never materialize after all, but somewhere somebody is going to start skimming the money right off of the top for that fees, this fees, and all that stuff, and basically then they move on to the next one to strip. Pension funds. In pension funds, what happens is you shift the risk to workers, for example, DC schemes, and diverting savings into alternative investments such as hedge funds, private equity, instead of the real economy. That's what I'm saying. Don't fall for this. And somebody says that, oh, if you, instead of investing in this brick and mortar company that will give you 10% return on investment, we can invest here, which will give you 18 to 20%. That's all bullshit. It has never happened. The derivatives are basically a confidence game, trying to take somebody else's new money and pay off the old one and just keep going on. And this thing has run its course, in my opinion. So people, those of you who are holding all these pension funds, when your chance comes to go to the annual general body meeting, do prep for it, find out, read how they have invested, and make sure you ask good questions so that your capital is preserved. Now, the stagnation and inequality in all these three countries is staggering. First, let's take a look at United Kingdom. What has UK done? It has become highly financialized and has suffered from persistently low productivity and investment. This is what I meant when I said that the best and the brightest have moved into high finance. They are constantly looking to see what else can I sell to this existing customer and make my money off of it. I mean, I used to see this thing when I used to travel in England and Europe. On Monday mornings, if you look at Heathrow Airport, right? About 10 minutes before the plane takes off, the plane could be going to Europe, it could be going to Hague, Netherlands, or it could be going to Paris, it could be going to some city in Germany or Madrid. Almost all of them look like 30s, 40s bankers. They're all going out to all these places on a Monday morning, and I don't know when they return back, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but all they seem to be doing is, how do I sell this new financial instrument to this poor sucker? I mean, I was observing this when I was there in 2007, before the 2008 crisis. I hope things have quietened down a little bit now, but the fact remains that there's a whole big industry wanting to sell you lemons. And you already have tons of lemonade, you already have lemon pie, everything conceivably done using lemon, you already have it. And they want to come and sell you a new set of lemons. So let's take a look at what happened since the 2008 crisis in terms of the productivity growth. UK's productivity has slowed more severely than France and Germany, reflecting a chronic lack of private sector investment. Privates just completely stopped investing in United Kingdom. It was 0.8% in 2008-10, and it has come now down to 0.2%. And if you look at France, it was at 1% in 2008. It went up a little bit to 1.1% in 2011-13, and now it has come down to 0.6% in 2023-2025 period. Same with Germany, 1.2 at the beginning, and now they are at close to 0.7. So all of them are only marginally doing better than each other, but UK appears to be the worst affected. Now, there are also key structural issues that are plaguing United Kingdom. UK's economic stagnation is driven by a combination of weak investment, high inequality, meaning high unequal income, people that are making a lot of money or no money at all, and financial fragility. And for financial fragility, take a look at what happened in 2022, LDI. I think I'll have a reference link that talks about it, but do take a look at what happened in 2022 and how the entire pensioner system almost came to be undone, and it had to be again bailed out. Again, who bails them out? All the taxpayers start bailing them out. This is what has happened in United Kingdom. So let's take a look at, as a percentage, how much of these things are. High income inequality is 35%, and pension system vulnerability is 30%, and weak private investment, that is 35%. So all in all, UK is perhaps the most vulnerable of these three countries. That's why I say that they are the first ones that are going to be doing either a bailout from IMF, or they could also be the ones first introducing the CBDC, central bank digital currency. They're already making a move towards that by saying that we are going to issue digital ID. A digital ID is sort of like making sure that you have an ID on which You can go and open an account, a digital account, and then people will say whatever balance you have in your current bank account, that will be all transferred into digital pound, for example, and that's where you'll be starting to operate. The problem is, once that happens, the actual pounds in your hands will start disappearing maybe in 6 months or so, and then the fun starts, because the government can then tell you, you shall spend only so much money on this and not on that one, and then the whole thing is going to turn upside down. My prediction, I could be, and I hope I'm horribly wrong about this. Now, let's take a look at what is France's problem: fiscal strain and public debt. France's challenge is centered on fiscal strain. The public debt has been soaring, and it has led to credit rating downgrades, while political instability makes crucial fiscal reforms difficult, eroding confidence and slowing growth. The last two prime ministers exited because they could not implement one simple austerity measure. This is in the last 2 months. The Macron government is tottering because they don't enjoy public support. They did a sleight of hand and somehow are staying in power. I'm expecting Marine Le Pen to be the next president of France, and a lot of things are going to come out then, and you will know what I'm talking about. But if you look at the public debt as percentage of GDP, in 2020, France, it was around 118, and it has hovered around that almost every year. In 2024, it is estimated to have come down just a little bit, maybe 112, 113, and it is expected to be the same in this year also, predicted in 2025. Now, in France, what are the drivers of fiscal strain? Well, the first one is soaring public debt, that is 45%. The credit rating, which is 25%. See, when credit rating goes down, then what happens is every institution is forced to raise its rates of interest so that people will still continue to invest in you, which means you need to make some product that can give you an even higher rate of return than the interest rate of which you are paying to the people who are giving you money. So it becomes a big problem. Where are you going to generate a higher yield? You're already unproductive. You have a huge immigrant population that has no skill set, and they have to be fed. Otherwise, they get to the streets and start damaging property. What the hell do you do? That is the problem that is facing France, UK, and Germany. And yet they continue to accept these useless, in terms of productivity, useless illegal immigrants. I don't know what is going on in their minds. Really, it begs, these are some of the smartest minds going around in the world. What the F are you thinking, guys? Anyway, political instability, I told you that this was a sleight of hand by which Macron is still staying in power. Now let's look at Germany. Germany has a slightly different problem. Remember, in 1991 or 1992, East Germany merged with West Germany. West Germany, the original Germany, if you think of it as 4 parts, West Germany was 3 parts and East Germany was 1 part, everything combined together. But East Germany was economically much more backward. So the other 3 parts invested a lot of money into trying to pull up its poorer cousins from East Germany. And now you have some sort of a situation where Germany was just finding its feet. Unfortunately, since 2020, after COVID, it has become a big challenge. What has happened is Germany's powerful export-oriented model. That means it requires other countries to take its products. It cannot consume much of the product that it makes. For example, Germany is number 1 in heavy engineering. The kind of tools that you use to create bridges, railroads, tunnel boring machines. You get the idea, right? Unfortunately, all these things used to be sold to countries like China, and that is slowly drying up because China has managed to make their own version of the heavy engineering tools that Germany used to sell. So Germany has a problem there. It has to export it to somebody, and China in turn starts undercutting the prices of German product, and they start grabbing market share elsewhere. So Germany is finding itself squeezed out. As a matter of fact, Volkswagen auto plant is shuttered, I'm hearing, and this is going to be the first domino, in my opinion, which is going to bring out the crisis in Germany. Now, if you take a look at the annual GDP growth since 2020, 2020 is explainable because of COVID. It was minus 4.6. Then in 2021, Germany bounced back to 2.9%. In 22, it had 1.9, but in 23, minus 0.3%. In 24, 0.2%, and in 25 predicted to be 1%, and only 2026 they are expecting to grow significantly. I have done a separate episode on Germany's economy model. You do want to watch that one. That gives you in more depth details what is going on. But all these problems are created because of people trying to sell new ideas on something that should have never been entertained by many of these pension funds. Now, what is the challenge to German model? There are three challenges. First one is export vulnerability, that is about 40%. Then you have slow digital and energy adaptation, that is 35%, and domestic investment gap, that is challenges to the German model, 25%. Again, the same thing, a lack of domestic investment. People just don't trust Germany to be more price effective anymore, which means they have lost that edge of heavy engineering. That stuff used to be like the cutting edge thing that Germany was famous for. They seem to have lost that edge to China. I think that's a country that's really giving them the problem. On top of that, if you look at the fact that Nord Stream pipes have stopped pumping, their energy prices have gone up, which means the input rates have gone up. And this is true for all three countries. So that's the other whammy. And I don't know why they even wanted to go and fight with Russia. Instead, they could let Ukraine implement Minsk 1 and 2 accords, and everything would have been hunky-dory. Well, it's always 2020 hindsight. So we'll have to wait and see how all these people extricate themselves from these problems. So in conclusion, financial strip mining manifests as a structural shift from long-term productive investment to short-term financial maneuvering. This ultimately contributes to lower productivity, higher inequality, and increased financial fragility across all three nations. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.